All right, well, I am Patrick Reynolds. I am the CEO of Crosslink Consulting, and our breakout session this afternoon, is applied culture. Practical actions to start now. So we started today with some vision casting of what bad culture brings and drawing a contrast to what good culture looks like. So when I started this journey towards investing in improving the culture at Crosslink, first I knew that I had bad culture. So I guess step one is recognizing there are problems that need to be addressed. How do you go from recognizing that you have problems that need to be addressed to actually beginning to effect change? I went to a conference. They were specifically talking about that the resources that they were going to have, just like this conference, focused on culture. And I made furious notes, and I went back, lit up, on fire to begin to effect change. So I wanted to talk through some of what the things that we did and some of the things that I've learned in the meantime. But it would be a miss if we didn't start here. Shaping your culture is more than half done when you hire your team. So you can effect change, but if you've already got a team full of people who enjoy the bad culture, you're going to have a difficult situation on your hands. And that's, in truth, that's a large part of what I found. As I began to realize there were some people who were caustic in our environment. But, I loved them. We were a family. I cared about them. They had been there when we needed them. But that caustic attitude was keeping good people from coming on board. And it was keeping good people from staying. So just understand that no matter what you take away from today's conference, the existing people on your team, if they can't make this move with you, then it's time for you to help them out by helping them out. One of the things that we've done, and we had done it intermittently prior to me really focusing on culture, but one of the things that we refocused on was morning huddles. The idea is, in order to change the culture, you've got to spend a lot of time investing in people. And the people in your organization need to spend a lot of time with one another. So I began to brainstorm and think through ways to keep our people together, to keep our people at work and engaged with one another more. And today, 4 days a week, we have a 15 to 20 minute huddle. And it is so that we're all on the same sheet of music. Now, if your team is 500 people, that's going to be difficult. It's going to look a little different than ours. We've got a team of 15 today, and we talk about the highlights from yesterday and the highlights from today, and we can go around our table and finish that up in about 20 minutes. And one of the things that I started doing that I took away from that conference was Icebreakers. Anybody know what this is? You ever seen this before? This is called a thumb ball, yeah? And when you catch it, wherever your thumb lies, there's a question for you to answer. Sports I like to watch. Not many, but occasionally some baseball, occasionally some football. And then you toss it to somebody else. And I loved to open our morning meetings at 8 a.m. throwing this ball at people. Keeps them awake, gets them engaged early. There are other icebreakers, but this is one of them. And if you're trying to change the culture, keep it light, keep it fun. You're not going to get real serious. Every morning huddle can't be about changing culture. It really needs to be light to start with. And in those morning huddles, or however it looks at your organization, have your company mission, have your company values front and center. Have it printed out. Have somebody read it. Have someone articulate a story illustrating that narrative, illustrating that value. And this idea of crafting narratives, we're an IT company. We break a lot of stuff. We're the IT guys. We break stuff. So you can tell that two ways. You know, one is I spent 30 minutes, couldn't solve the problem. Jimmy's still got, still broken. Or you can say troubleshoot the problem, escalate it to the next tier. Your narrative matters, and if you're in charge of culture, or if you begin to take the reign of culture and you begin to accept the responsibility to alter culture, the way that you tell those stories is impactful. When someone on the team fails at something, change that narrative, make it a positive. And when someone does something positive, run with that, reward that, talk about that all week. The Netflix culture, you guys heard me refer to that earlier. One of the things that Reed Hastings says is that the culture deck is the best thing to come out of Silicon Valley. The idea that the values of a company can't be summed up in a mission statement. It really is. Netflix's culture deck is, 300 sheets of paper. You can download it. And it is stories illustrating the culture there. Does this look familiar, Declan? Let me ask you a question. The guy in the front or the guy in the back, whose side of the boat is that leak in? Whose side of the boat has a hole in it? The guy in the front, raise your hand. If it's the guy in the front, if that's the side of the boat that has a leak in it, it's both of them. You don't have sides. You're in it together. How many of you are on a team at work? How many of you have a leak somewhere on that team and it's somebody else's leak? It's your leak. Your boat has a leak in it too. You can't say the leak is on your side. As a team, you're in it together. You win as a team and you lose as a team. If that coworker, if you need to have a cleanup with that coworker, get something out of the air, clean the air. If you don't do that, you both have a leak in the boat. So the problems that affect the team affect the whole team. There's not a side of the boat with a leak in it. If you're going to change the culture, you're going to need to accentuate the positives. You're going to need to set standards. You're going to need to win as a team. One of the things that we began to implement was Friday chill time. About 4 o'clock, give or take, depending on how soon we get our initiatives done for the week, we have downtime Friday afternoons. We had the number 3 point, find something meaningful to your team. I don't know what the correct term is. You know how you have a wine sommelier? There's a term for that for beer. I don't remember the right term. But we had a beer connoisseur on our team, and I put him in charge. I bought the equipment, and we started to brew beer at Crosslink because it was meaningful to the team. And so a lot of Fridays we were brewing beer, and we were watching Silicon Valley on HBO, which is a great show for a IT company to watch together. And the team was sticking around till 6:30, spending time together. And then 2-3 weeks later, that beer had been bottled, and we would crack that open at 4 p.m. Not have 2 or 3, but have at least one beer and celebrate together, celebrate the wins of the week together. So that was just something meaningful that I listened to my team, I recognized was meaningful, and I began to celebrate and set aside time for and reward that behavior. If the behavior from the week was good, then we enjoyed Friday chill time. And when I got somebody on the team who didn't want to have beer, we did root beer floats for that guy. And, of course, all of us enjoyed the root beer floats as well. So rewards should get people together. The reward should not be, all right, we finished up for the week early, guys. Get out of here. Take Friday afternoon off and spend it with your family. That's not wrong. Do that on occasion. But reward the behavior by putting people together on your team. Have them spend time together. Let your hair down as the boss. let your hair down as a manager. It's going to be, I heard someone say, when you have a lake day and, you've played water soccer, I don't know, and, you've knocked your boss off of his jet ski or whatever, you probably can't think the same negativity towards that person on Monday. So if you're getting together with your team outside of the stiff, formal work environment, it's helpful for culture. We started doing pizza parties about once a month, and we would go to a little pizzeria in in South Augusta. I'd have my whole office there, and the only thing I did was pay for the pizza. But my team came on a Saturday. They brought their spouses on occasion. You can't pay for that, right? That is the result of focusing on culture and spending the time to build the culture. We did a company picnic at my house about 3 weeks ago, to open my house to our employees and their spouses. I grilled burgers, It's not a big expense. It's not a big investment in time, but it's meaningful. It's meaningful for me. I know it's meaningful for them. We do lunch and learns. Well, everybody wins from a lunch and learn if it's, not too stiff and formal and it's not too long-winded and the amount that you're teaching isn't too long. And then you can celebrate somebody and you can see what they want to have. Maybe they want to have Zaxby's. Maybe they want to have sushi. Well, because Jimmy is the champion of the week, we're going to do sushi. He picked it, And if you want to pick what you want next time, you want barbecue, lead the team. So you can reward the good behavior. And then we started Casual Friday probably 4 years ago, blue jeans, which, that's not how I grew up, right? You wear a tie, you're formal, you charge a premium for your services, you need to look the part. So this was a nice concession. Everybody felt included. It's amazing how impactful just wearing blue jeans on Friday is for people. We've talked about recognition a lot. That's what Sally's doing in the next room. So we began to we bought Kudos pads. You can get those on Amazon. Kudos. Got a few check boxes. I put up a little bulletin board, and we pin those Kudos, and we draw a winner on a weekly basis or whenever there's 10. And the reason because some weeks there's only 2 or 3 written. But when I've got at least 10 Kudos, we do a drawing. We read all of them, but one of them is the winner. And the Kudos, this little sheet, it says, I so appreciate Jimmy because they're a team player, they supported me, and then there's a place for you to write it in. And then the person who submitted it has their name at the bottom. And the winner of that drawing, we give $25 to, and the person who put it in gets $10. So it's a way to help the team edify one another, because that's not my strong point. I'm not the best at accentuating the positive, so I've had to think of ways to have Bentley put a positive down for somebody, or have Damon to write a positive down for somebody. That person still feels valued, even though I didn't put the Kudos in. I didn't think about it. I didn't say attaboy. They still feel rewarded. And there's no replacement for you giving positive feedback as well. My wife loves getting movie tickets from her work. That's very meaningful for her. She's a nurse at University Hospital. She's out front. She greeted many of you as you came in. When a nurse manager comes by and says, you've been working hard, we want to recognize that. Here's some movie tickets. That just makes her month. That's not my love language. It wouldn't matter to me, but it matters to her. So finding out what's meaningful to people. This birthday anniversary cards, how much will that cost you to do for the members of your team? Mail it to their home. And don't put any money in it. Just, love you, Patrick. Happy birthday. Happy anniversary. It's meaningful. Involve the spouse when you can. We started inviting people on our team out to dinner with my bride and I. And, it's not a boss-employee dinner. It's peers. And it's meaningful. It's meaningful to me. So sometimes the culture shift isn't happening. You've still got problems. That person isn't making the turn. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully you've done your part. But that person isn't making the turn. Should discipline be public? This is a touchy subject. But we've all heard praise in public and discipline in private, right? In Reed Hastings' book, No Rules Rules, when there's a termination because of failure to follow company procedure and embody company values, it's discussed in the meetings. It's discussed publicly, which I was a little shocked by, but it makes some sense, right? Timmy didn't exhibit this value. He didn't properly embody this value, and so we had to offboard Timmy. And that's not meant as a threat, but it is meant to help people understand the importance to you of those values. You've heard that you should hire slow and fire fast. Well, discipline doesn't need to be firing, but discipline, when you have corrective feedback for people, it should be quick so that they can understand it and so that it hasn't built up and become something stagnant or negative in you. Give them the feedback. Who knows what the Oreo Method is? What is it? Yeah. You say, Timmy, you're very valuable to this team. You've made such an impact with this customer. But here's what I need you to do. You can't do what you did last Friday again because you're so valuable to this team. We need you, right? Positive, negative, positive. It's helpful. And this is something my first business coach taught me. Patrick, you're going to get to do the telling. But before you do the telling, you need to do the listening. Perfect example is I had a senior engineer take a 2.5 hour lunch with a new employee. And they came back in and I was steaming. What are you thinking? How irresponsible. And so I was thinking about what my coach had taught me. Pulled them in my office. The senior engineer, I said, I'm curious. That's the language she taught me to use. I'm curious. Why did you take a 2.5 hour lunch with Ryan? And I thought they were being irresponsible. And what I found out is he said, he's new. I've been looking for opportunities to spend time with him. We have not been able to catch up. And so we had a light afternoon. I invited him to go so that we would have a couple of hours together so that I could build some rapport with him. And so my suspicion began to change. I began to trust him because I began to ask the question. I didn't assume. I began to assume positive intent, as Declan Will teaches. But I had to do the asking first. What he had done with that 2.5 hour lunch, it served us. It served me. And I was just jumping to all the wrong conclusions. And I was ready to do the yelling. I was certainly ready to do the telling. You will not. You will. So I had to take a breath. I got to do the asking. And that was a major shift in my ability to trust my team. I stopped assuming irresponsibility and I have to babysit these people. So I'm not sure I'm ready to assume positive intent all the time, but I at least began to not just jump to conclusions. I began to ask the questions. Expectations versus agreements. How many of you have heard this concept? My goodness, we have a lot of expectations of people. To go from telling people, I need this done by Monday morning, I expect this done by Monday, you know. I expect this by Friday afternoon. To go from that to this idea of agreements, with an expectation, it's all on you. And they've got to appease the boss, and they've got to, you're the bad guy. When you have required something of someone, you've set expectation, you've told them what you expected, versus an agreement where you say, look, John, I really need this by Friday afternoon. Can we get this done by Friday? Let me ask you a question. What do you need to have this done by Friday? Well, you know, I've got these 2 other deadlines you've got on me. Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you, if I can get someone else to do those, can you have this for me Friday afternoon? Can you have it by start of business on Monday? Can you do that? Yeah, if you can get those other things off me, I'll have it to you for Monday morning. And then, you know, John, like everybody, he squanders a little too much time, and he's got to work the weekend. Who's the bad guy? Is it you and your expectation, or is it the commitment that he made? So the idea of an agreement versus an expectation, it begins to shift culture. It begins to shift who the bad guy is and who's responsible. People don't want to miss their commitments, but that's a very different thing than your expectation. Honor your commitments. So one of the things that the collaborative way teaches is that commitment is both ways. I used to manage by telling people, getting a commitment from people, and then waiting to see if they were going to fail or not, and suspecting that they were going to miss that commitment. But what the collaborative way teaches is continue to own the commitment. When you feel that deadline is in jeopardy, you go to that person and say, "How are we doing? You said you were going to have it by Monday. Is that still good? Is that still reasonable? Do I need to call the client and let them know it's not going to be Monday?" So owning the commitment, even though someone has committed, that's a powerful and a team-building feature. And correction is not to demean, it's not to belittle, it is to build up. That's what that word means, edify. It's to build up, because again, whose leak is in the boat? Whose boat is leaking? Is it the guy in the front? So to edify, if you build up somebody on your team by correcting them, have you built the whole team up? And then this idea of, does it serve you? This comes from my first coach as well. Does it serve you? I got on a coaching session and I just wanted to rant and rave about somebody, and that was her comment. Does it serve you? Yeah, I know that you want to yell at them and you want to bite their head off. And you can. As the leader, you can. And it'll feel good for a second. But does it serve you? Patrick, if you are sharp with that person and you let them know how disappointed you are, is that going to serve you or not? And the answer was no, of course it's not. And this particular case was they needed constant reinforcement. They kept asking me the most mundane questions. And she taught me to say something that did serve me. Why do you feel the need to ask me that? I completely trust your judgment. I completely trust your decision. You don't have to ask me those little things. And it had its impact. That person began to make decisions on their own. Be a leader. And this is my last slide. We're going to have a few minutes, I hope. So I believe that the bigger the position of leadership, the greater the humility that it requires. Does anybody teach this? I've never heard this concept before. Rarely. Actually, Dave Ramsey. I've heard it from Dave Ramsey and nowhere else. That the bigger the position of leadership, the greater the humility required. That's not what we think about when we're young and we see the head honcho, when we want to be the boss. I'm thinking of a Matchbox 20 song. We want to be that rainmaker, right? We want to be the head honcho. But it doesn't talk about humility. Leaders are flawed, and that's okay. To be vulnerable. A lot of that team building stuff that I've talked about on the earlier slides, It's about being okay with your vulnerabilities and sharing your vulnerabilities. That goes into the humility, and people are going to respect that. And then just lead. That's another Dave Ramsey concept. There is no one who is the perfect leader. Declan is not the perfect leader. Patrick, definitely not the perfect leader. But there's a quote from someone, some famous guy, who said, it's not so important as a leader, it's not so important what you decide as that you decide. Make a decision and move forward. You're going to mess up. There's going to be cleanups that you have to do when you mess up. But lead. Just lead. Don't do it with arrogance. Do it with all the other criteria, but just lead. And then, resolute. This was like my word of the year for 2020. I couldn't decide. I'm just kidding. So, picking a direction, picking a horse and riding it, that concept, there's a lot of attractive things to pursue. Find out the things that are important. Stay with it. Don't pivot to the next pretty shiny thing that comes along. And when it comes to principles, decide, stick with it, be resolute. We began to include our team on decisions about new technicians. So we actually do, every time we do a hiring process, for the third interview, it's a hands-on 3-hour interview. They come into the office, they answer phones, they follow up on tickets, and they do it in the middle of our team. And the next morning, in that huddle, we ask them for feedback on skill as a technician and cultural fit. And they all get a say, assuming the person did well enough. Sometimes it's not, and there's no vote. It's obvious, right? But they have ownership in that decision. So bringing the whole team into team decisions has been impactful. Don't desire to be right. This is a personal message. I'm a high C on the DISC profile. Very detailed, very specific, precise. I desire precision. I always want to correct people's spelling. I always want to correct people's speech. And sometimes I desire to be right, and I put too much emphasis on being right, and it's hurtful. It doesn't serve the team. It doesn't serve me. So instead of desiring to be right, desire what's best. I don't have a good analogy here, but you can do a lot of damage being right. You can do a lot of damage insisting on being right. And then don't lead with a 12-foot pole. So I kept personnel at arm's length. I didn't fraternize with people because the day was going to come where I was going to have to terminate their employment. On some level, that's how I operated. I wasn't able to trust the team. I've talked through some of that. Well, what kind of culture does that breed? A weak one. It doesn't build a very good team. You don't trust them. They don't trust you. They're just going to mail it in when it comes to effort. But to become someone who trusts them, your trust in people can ennoble them. Your belief that they're going to do a spectacular job and you making sure that you're professing your belief in their ability and how much they care and accentuating the positive, that begins to ennoble positive behavior. They begin to strive to live up to your expectations. Has that happened to any one of you? Where someone placed trust in you that you didn't really merit, but yet because they put their trust in you, you began to strive to live up to it. So, we're going to get to the awkward part of this presentation. I want you to stand up, want you to make eye contact with someone that you didn't come with, hopefully someone you don't know. And I want you to pair up, just pairs. And if you don't pair up with someone, raise your hand, please. Go ahead. Raise your hand if you don't have somebody yet. All right, go ahead and introduce yourself. At least know the name of the other person. Make sure they've got a badge on. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to share a big win, a big recent win that you've had. Share that with one another. Tell the other person about a big win in your life from the last couple months. Go ahead. All right, take one more minute. One more minute. All right, thank you, thank you. Let's go ahead and have a seat. But don't get too far away from that person. We have one more exercise. So let me ask you, go ahead and have a seat. So let me ask you, is there anybody who would be willing to share or comfortable sharing a big win from your partner? James? Woo! Is that right? How about you, Bentley? Would you share James's win if he's comfortable? That is impressive. Who else would share a win? Congratulations. One more. One more. One more. Yes, sir. Would you share a win?
So, Mr. Graham is in insurance. He owns several offices in different states. And within Colonial Life, they have small, medium, large, and what's the top
Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for your openness to share. I have a harder task I'm going to ask of you. If you would, get with that same person and share a hurt from a big hurt maybe from the last couple months. Be as vulnerable as you are willing to. But if you would, let's go ahead and stand back up. Let's connect with that same person if you would. And if you're willing, be vulnerable and share a loss or a miss or a pain from the last few months. Go ahead. We'll take 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. All right, about 1 more minute, y'all. All right, just take 1 more second, and then let's go ahead and have a seat. Was that painful? Was that painful for anybody? A little bit? Who would be comfortable having your difficult point shared by the other person? If you're okay with the person that you shared with talking about what you shared with them, raise your hand. Declan, would you share what Faith said?
Yes, so Faith has put a program together in her organization that was helping people go through a program over a 3-year period, and her first graduate through that program, part of the contract was that they would come back and work with her organization to help grow it, and they just chose to take a job in another place with a big salary instead of honoring their side of the commitment.
I'm sorry. Would you share Declan's?
For all of the reach and touch into all the business world of doing that with her in New Zealand. And we just to play the important moments of their life. And that's what's hard. Pointing to others that contact with people in your life.
I'm sorry, sir. What you do is very impactful for us, and we thank you very much. And I can appreciate to some degree, that loss. Who else would share? One more. One more. Who else would be comfortable sharing? All right, would you share Graham's?
Sure. So his grandmother passed away several years ago. He was executor of her estate. And sometime here just in the recent past, her house actually burned. And I'm assuming no one was living there, it was empty. But they had gotten a lot of the stuff out of the house, but there was still a lot of family mementos, pictures, and stuff that were left.
Sorry, sir. Is there... So I've done this exercise before, and I feel connection with the people that I've shared a win and a loss from recent months. Do you guys feel that? Like you have a complete stranger now that you've opened up to. That's a little bit cathartic. It's a little bit healing to share a wound. And somehow it creates trust. Somehow it creates empathy. And yet, we don't tend to open up to our work family. We have all this hurt, and we have all these injuries, and we have all these worries and fears. And as leaders, we just bottle it up, and we shove it down, and we strive to deal with it on our own. How much impact would it be at work for you to be vulnerable? You know, maybe a little bit. Like the last time I did something like this, I still remember the empathy. I still feel the empathy with the people that I opened up with. And I hope that you guys leave here knowing something about somebody that you didn't know before, having some empathy with someone that was a stranger prior to this. And I hope that that's meaningful to you as you go back to your workplaces tomorrow or Monday. There's the opportunity for us to be flawed leaders, to be flawed team leaders, and to be open about our failures and our hurts, and that is going to have the opposite effect of what we think. We think it's going to cause doubt in people, but it doesn't. The people that shared that with you, did that increase your doubt? It increased your empathy. So I hope that you will take this and that you'll strive to open up a little bit more with your work family. Thank you, guys. So